This is my 2v2 progression from May of 2021 until February of this year. In the time that it takes a baby to fully develop in the womb, I managed to lose 41 MMR. But this is the progression I've made over the last month. So, why am I showing you this? To brag about getting GC? No. Well, kinda. I show you that because getting unrank stuck only ever really happened because of changes that I intentionally made. So let's get into what those are. Number 1, mechanics, but not how you might think. Before you click away, rushing to learn how to speed flip and flip reset, wait. That's not exactly what I mean. While these mechanics are cool, I can nearly guarantee that there is at least one basic mechanic that you haven't fully mastered. And doing so will help you way more than learning any niche advanced mechanic ever could. If you're like most people, you like practicing what you're already good at. And I get it. It's much more rewarding that way because you're actually succeeding a fair amount of the time. But if your goal is to improve, that is a terrible use of practice time. Let me give an example from my own journey. I love speedrunning this game. For a little over a year now, I've made racetrack maps and ring maps. But there's something both of these map types have in common. You never hit the ball. My car control has gotten way better from doing this. My ball control, on the other hand... So, temporarily, I threw my usual warm-ups out the window and aimed to get better at dribbling and double taps. And I'm not even talking about the absolute heater double taps either. Just something that required me to get a controlled first touch in order to work on aerial ball control. The way I practice these things is through Dribble Challenge 2, Air Dribble Hoops, and the Devo Training Pack. Overall, my point is, figure out where you personally are least consistent and work on that. If it's being quick in the air, work on ring maps. Or if you're on console, you can use the Sudden Aerials pack by Waitin. He has a great tutorial on how to use that pack. I won't get into it, but I will leave that in the description because that was an immensely helpful tool for me. If you find wall reads hard, work on the Devo pack like I did. Or use the free play bindings to shoot from weird angles. Don't practice the hardest, coolest things, but instead work for consistency on shots that come up frequently. Even if you don't get as much dopamine from non-bangers. Number 2, what I got wrong about rotations. There are 2 major rotational errors I regularly found myself making. Number 1, I hoped for the best rather than preparing for the worst. By this, I just mean I positioned myself for unlikely passes more often than I got in position to make a save or buy my teammate time. I treated every single possession as a scoring opportunity no matter how unlikely it was that I actually score, when in reality, it's oftentimes much better to just maintain possession until a better opportunity arises. And number 2, I played as if my teammate was where I hoped he would be instead of checking where he was and positioning myself accordingly. To add to this, I rotated as if cutting rotation was never okay, rather than allowing for shifts in rotation when either my teammate or I needed boost, made a weird save, or otherwise just found ourselves out of position. To be honest, I don't have a true fix for rotational errors. The main thing you can do is just be aware of the mistakes you personally make and try to notice every time that you make the mistake. Viewing your replays is the best way I've found to discover bad habits and find ways to fix them. Make sure to not only watch your replays from your perspective, but also your teammates to see how you could have backed them up better. Watching replays from your opponent's perspectives can sometimes be helpful too because it helps you see how you could have attacked better. Right here, I should have challenged the ball goal side, but instead I ended up putting my teammate in a pretty bad situation. And then here I pass as if my teammate is near to me without actually looking over to realize that he's turning away. Number 3, don't get in your head. The absolute most important change I made was barely even in the game, and it had to do with my mentality. When you're down a goal or two, do you assume you've lost? And before you say no, really think about it. At what point do you begin to just start thinking about the next game or consider the current game a wash? I know I got to a point where I was more focused on what caused us to concede the last goal than I was on actually getting the next one. Fixing this mentality boiled down to recognizing that conceding will happen and brushing them off before the next kickoff has even started. Alright, good play. I began to treat every moment of the game like it's 0-0 and play on until it's actually impossible to make the comeback in time. You'll be surprised how frequently you can make a comeback, and honestly I'm not even sure if that's that the other team just gets too comfortable in their lead or what, but I have first-hand evidence that changing the way I viewed the game impacted my play more than anything else. And that leads me to my final point, the branch off from mentality, so I guess number 3.5, focus. This game takes constant attention. This is a somewhat unusual tip, but I'm not exaggerating when I say that every few seconds there is a moment in which either you could score or you could be scored on. Sometimes both. The way that my teammate and I kept our focus up was through constant communication of what we were doing and where we were. If you solo queue, you can still work on focus by removing distractions and constantly thinking about the best ways in which you can support your teammate. If you do play with a consistent teammate, I cannot recommend communication enough. Feel free to check out my last video for an example of how we communicate.